welcome to Past, Present, and Future, or Three Questions, the podcast where we learn about people's career journeys, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go to next. I'm Parrots Cohen, a technologist and a wordsmith, and in my time in industry, I've been fortunate to work with both large companies and small startups, alongside a number of very talented and hardworking individuals. This podcast is some of my conversations with them, where we learn about their journeys and what motivates them. If you'd like to be in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to have a certain level of seniority or a number of years of experience. We all have something to share and learn from each other. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast or get involved in the collaboration, we'd also like to hear from you. All right, looking forward to our journey together as we learn more about each other and enrich ourselves in the process.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. We have Chris, a product manager, here with us from Google, and I'm also representing Google. I'm wearing Sparky, the Firebase mascot. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to chat.
All right, Chris, let's dive into the basics. Let's kind of go in the past. We're gonna kind of back to the past with the DeLorean. Where did it all begin?
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess like really looking at this from where it began, in terms of like how I got into the tech world, into where I am today, a lot of it is predominantly driven just on the kind of person that I was growing up as a kid. I was very much the tinkerer, curious type, wanting to know how things worked. And even when I was like really young, we had an old Windows NT computer, and this is like when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and it broke. And my parents were like, "All right, we got to chuck it." And I wasn't really using it that much, but my parents literally packed it up, ready to throw it away when trash day came around. And I asked my parents just out of curiosity, I was like, "Hey, if I can fix it, can I have this computer?" I had no understanding of anything to do with it. We had that computer for like less than 2 years. No, even less than a year, I think. But we had the box. And my parents were like, "Yeah, sure." And so as a kid, I was like, "All right, I don't know what's wrong with it, but I'm just gonna troubleshoot and figure out what's going on because I get to keep the computer." And it had the manual, which I guess is like parallel to like developer documentation in a sense. And I just read the manual, and it had a section about recovery. And in there said like, "Oh, just reference the recovery floppy disk, and you can go into, I think it's like the safe boot mode, and you could reset the computer." And I followed those instructions, and through that, I fixed the computer. My parents saw me as some sort of like tech whiz god that I had to touch, that even their older friends who are in the tech field couldn't fix or didn't have the time to fix. And from that, it really ushered a lifestyle of people within my immediate family coming to me and asking me to help fix small little computers and tech. And that going to other family members and to friends. And really, all of those different opportunities, I never once was a professional or expert in fixing VCRs, but I definitely was somebody who could read or explore or just tinker to try to understand. And I didn't have a 100% success rate fixing everything, but it did boost my confidence. And over time, um, it made me more and more appreciative to realize that I can solve problems, like real problems that I face day to day or that people that I care about face day to day through the power of technology. And it's not just something that's expensive, that is like a novelty, but it's actually something that could impact the day to day lives. And a lot of us do come across these different challenges, and like you just have the opportunity to help troubleshoot and fix things and make lives better for people. And that's really what I liked about tech, the opportunity that it presented, the potential and the impact and the scale in terms of like things when the internet came online and people were starting to get online and connect with people around the world. All those became a really exciting thing for me. And so through that, I pursued a degree in engineering and IT. And then over time, I was able to land a role in the tech space, where today I'm working at Google, but I've had opportunities to work at other companies. I've done small little startups myself, and really just immerse myself into how do I solve problems for people that I care about, people that I know could benefit from these challenges, and how can I use tech in a way to expand and accelerate and grow that? And that's kind of been my focus. And today I'm a product manager, but I've worn a couple of different hats along the way on that same theme of problem solving.
That's incredible. I think like I've heard from like many people's stories, but even personally, I can relate like that moment of exploration, whether it's kind of with just messing with the operating system or kind of fixing some hardware, kind of really is that genesis of a lot of people's love affair with tech. And for me as well, like that's what it was. It was messing around with some root commands or kind of replacing a screen on a laptop. Um, you mentioned you're currently in product. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of some of the twists and the turns that kind of brought you to within kind of the product space?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think like to your point, just like that curiosity, a lot of people in the tech space have that. It's something that you commonly come across where nobody is suddenly like an expert in Python or JavaScript, but a lot of folks who are good at it have spent a significant amount of time just trying to understand, trying to debug errors, and that's how they got better. And so that curiosity is the key aspect, irrespective of the function or the work that you're in. But to your question around like twists and turns, so today I'm a product manager, but I've had an opportunity to touch across a variety of different functions. Um, when I first joined Google, I actually came in as something called an account strategist. And that opportunity was essentially helping answer billing and AdWords related queries for large customers. And it was a great role. It was like got my hands wet into the world of ads at Google, learning about things like they have this concept of YouTube takeover on certain days, like the Super Bowl, for example. Companies pay, and then you can actually get an ad on the YouTube homepage, and it takes over everything, and it's a big deal. But a lot of work behind the scenes comes into making that a reality. And I knew the ins and outs, particularly on the billing side, which is an important piece for it. But I knew long term, I wanted to get closer into the world of engineering, into helping not just launch and support it, but also contribute to the core functionality of the product. At that time, I didn't know what a product manager was, but I definitely had a lot of ideas, especially because I was on the front lines working with the customers who were trying to launch a specific thing on a specific day in a specific part of the world, and seeing the types of unique challenges that maybe when you're looking at it holistically, you're not actually understanding just how much of a burden some capabilities are. And so I knew immediately that I wanted to translate my skills to be closer to that part where I'm actually helping design and iterate the feature, not just launch and support it. And so I spent a lot of time trying to finesse my way into that world. And um, for better or not, it's often hard if you don't have a traditional software engineering background or a traditional product manager background to get into that world. What I had to do a lot was I had to build a network of people around me who can back and be sort of advocates for me that yes, Chris has these skills. And so there's a concept of 20% roles. I don't think it exists or it's not publicized as much at Google now, but it was a big thing back then where you could spend 20% of your time doing something that you care about. And what I did was I tried to spend 20% of my time working with people who were in the functions and the areas that I wanted to be in, so that when the opportunity came across, they can vouch for me and they can be the ones who can help give me credibility to go closer into the product and the engineering side of things. And so what I did was I was trying to just reach out to those people and for and just honest transparency, a lot of people just didn't reply. They didn't have the time of day. Who was this random Joe Schmo reaching out to me? And so I reoriented the way I was approaching people, where I would actually look to see which teams had open roles for the types of products that I was, or the types of roles that I was looking for. And then I'll reach out to them and say, hey, my name is Chris. I'm looking to get closer into a product role because I realized at the time that's what I wanted to pursue. And I see you have an open role that's been open for the last 2 months. I'm not sure if I'm ready at the time to be a product manager, but I'm sure there's a ton of work piling up, and I'm happy to lend my time to help do some of that work so that we can at least I can help you. And that actually ended up being a very, very good way of approaching people because then it became more of a I'm helping unload burden from you rather than you wasting time to have to like assess me as a product manager and then help me transfer ladders and all this other effort. And people responded very positively to that. I did a couple of those 20% projects. And one of those projects just happened to be with a team on Google Maps. And they initially had a role listed for, I think it was like a web developer. And I was just helping out in the meantime. And they said, like, hey, you've been doing this project for the last 4 months. You've been knocking it out of the park. We are happy to retitle the function to be a technical program manager. If you are interested in doing that, like we want you to join the team. And I was like, yeah, absolutely no brainer. And I switched over through that where the team already is like, we have a candidate, we want Chris. And that opened the door because then I was on the engineering side of Google and I was able to then work more closely with teams. But really what I learned from that was just like, how do I approach people? How do I come to them in a way that we're meeting in the middle, or there's benefit in spending time and trying to, learn something from them rather than just explicitly trying to get them to help me transfer over to a specific ladder. And it's not 100% success guarantee that every team is going to, spend time to do that, but it does change the dynamic and then how people are perceiving that cold email or that cold outreach. And over the time, as a technical program manager, I realized that a lot of the work that I was doing on the Google Maps team was actually more product management. And we had a mighty group of technical program managers. There was 4 of us, where I was doing a lot of product management work. The other 3 were doing a lot of software engineering work. And it just so happened that they transferred to be software engineers. And then I later transferred to product manager officially. But I cherish that time because it gave me a lot of flexibility to do things across many different ladders and functions while contributing to a core problem that people had, and benefiting users while also growing my career.
That's incredible. I mean, there's so many kind of great lessons and things that I think our audience will really enjoy and appreciate. Kind of the approach of kind of having that clarity of what you're kind of looking after and kind of being persistent and following your curiosity, kind of trying to create those opportunities and really kind of approaching networking and approaching kind of internal kind of corporate networking as an opportunity to fulfill another team's need, as opposed to kind of just being hyper focused on what you want out of the exchange. And I think that's a great approach, and I think one we can all learn from. Let's talk about today. What are you working on these days at Google?
Yes. So today I lead the product for something called the Google Developer Program, as well as some platforms, which for the most part are the flagship site on developers.google.com and the developer documentation and learning systems that are powering it. And so I'm a group product manager. And what the Google Developer Program is actually something that we announced last year. And it's intended to guide and support developers across a variety of functions and disciplines and levels, but guide them as they go about their journey across the Google ecosystem. And so someone who's a student all the way to an enterprise developer who might be using or assessing Google's technologies, we're supporting and guiding them across all of Google's services and products, oriented specifically around the developer and the technical practitioner function. And so like some examples of this is like a lot of times, there's the Google developer ecosystem is vast. Like there's things like Android, right? And you might be an Android developer building an app and you know all the ins and outs about Android, but when you're adding authentication or you need to add a database to your app, there's Google Cloud, right? And too often, historically, those would approach users as if they were just a new customer, right? You're coming to cloud for the first time, irrespective of the fact that you may have already have proficiencies or you've done stuff with Android. And what we'd like to be able to do is bridge that so that we know this is Brett who has familiarity with Android. How do we guide them in his context, in his preferred programming language when it comes to things like adding authentication, adding a database to his app? And how do we support him and connect him with existing Google technologies to unlock the success and ultimately, help his users too? And so the program has a free tier where you can get a number of benefits across the Google ecosystem. And just late last year in November, we announced a premium tier in the Google Developer Program, where you get premium benefits, including things like $500 of Google Cloud credits, unlimited access to Cloud Skills Boost. And we're actively working to grow and evolve the package, both at the free and the paid tier, to really provide a meaningful package and composition of benefits to help guide developers to success across a variety of levels and functions that we're supporting.
And I'm completely biased because I worked on this team as well. The Google Developer Program is very, very powerful. It allows you to really kind of connect, um, to see kind of what other developers are working on, kind of join different communities, and really access all of Google's technologies in a really kind of in networked and kind of interfaced way. And having been a developer in the past, I can definitely kind of see some of the pain points when you transition from product to product. But really, there's so many wonderful products in the Google developer ecosystem, and being able to connect them across programming languages and across product lines, I think is really, really powerful. And you're doing amazing work. And again, I'm totally not unbiased, but you're an amazing leader within the product space. Um, Shifting gears a bit, let's think about kind of the future. Um, and again, this is up to you. You can think about kind of 5 years down the road. You can think about 10 to 15 years down the road. Where would you like to take your career? Where do you kind of see things evolving towards?
Yeah, so it's funny. We're like a couple of minutes into this, and I don't think we've said AI once yet, but you can't go more than 15 minutes without saying AI. I think like AI is a big component right now in terms of just where I see my career evolving, where I see my discipline evolving, and also the products and the services that we're offering. Where, like, if you think about it, the function of a product manager historically, you were tasked with defining the requirements of a feature, breaking it down, and then working with engineering and design to execute on that. But we see a lot of things happening in the space now where just one person or a small group of folks are able to make massive impact uh, through things like AI helping accelerate and like impact, like increase the impact. And I think that's going to continue to be true. And what I want to make sure is that the skill sets that I have aren't antiquated because there's services that are able to grow and impact more than I could do within the time that I have. And so I'm really trying to understand how to apply AI into my world and how to do so in a way that can actually not just be a chore, but actually help me in the areas that AI is better equipped to do. So things that come to mind, for example, is when I am like just in my own personal time, I like to tinker with things, and I found AI is a very helpful thing to just like prototype stuff with. And so one idea that I've had for the longest time that I just haven't had the hours in the day to do was I wanted to turn off my thermostat depending on the weather outside. And you could do this if you have if this then that, but you have to pay, and I don't want to pay for that. And Nest has an API, and I wanted to just very quickly write a little script that checks the weather in my area. And then if it does, connects to my specific Nest device and then turns off or changes the temperature of my house. It's not a built-in function. It really drives me mad. Nest doesn't have that, but you can do this now. And with AI, you can crank it out in a few hours, in like an hour or two at most, right? And I've never used the Nest API beyond just checking to see if it has these methods. And that's a very like applicable today thing. 5, 10 years from now, how does this evolve? And so I'm really interested in making sure that the way that AI is coming to fruition is one that I can still also apply into my day to day. Potentially, when it comes to prototyping functionality, I can do a lot more and have a hands-on playable prototype that I can work with UX or work with engineering to deploy once we've seen it take off, rather than having to spec out or draw rough mocks and then have to partner with UX before we can validate some of these ideas. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that unfolds. I also know, like from a discipline perspective, there's a lot of fear and animosity about AI and what it means. But I actually just last week read a really good article from Julie Zhu about the transformation of the product manager discipline and how it could evolve. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. Like at the end of the day, we're just solving problems, and AI is a tool that can help. But we'll still need people to help translate what those problems are to help make sense of that. I don't know exactly how that's going to manifest, but I do still see that product or people who are solving problems are an integral part in that system. And so I'm just trying to stay afloat and understand like how to be on the bleeding edge instead of get blindsided later on.
That's an incredible perspective, and kind of thinking about these new skills and new technologies, not just kind of in the macro professional space, but even kind of on the personal level. I think really that through line, some of the ideas you shared with us, of kind of your approach to your career and kind of curiosity, following your passions, kind of trying to solve problems, um, and thinking about things creatively. I think definitely kind of the more fear and the more kind of unsure we all are, kind of the more we can kind of develop those skills of kind of to navigate those waves and navigate those uncertainties, but also identify opportunities, because a lot of within those changes, within that churn, there kind of is the opportunity for new economies and new methods and new functions and new titles. Um, so yeah, that's very, very powerful, and that's really helpful and very vulnerable of you to share with us. So definitely really appreciate it. Um, yeah, this is Chris. Chris is, I would say, definitely a shining kind of paragon example of uh, an exemplary product manager, and we're so thankful you took the time for us to join the show today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting, and I look forward to uh, just connecting and seeing how this evolves and grows.
Thank you, Chris.